Peace Collective. Today we are talking about divine feminines realigning with their willpower and their magnetics and how this is affecting divine partnerships across the board. Okay, so I know we all heard about timeline shifting and being reoriented to where you ultimately belong. That it's been happening. It's a beautiful process of becoming. Now, what was shown to me last night is that the divine feminine specifically has been working hard on taking over the forefront of her life, right? To now be the one to align with, her magnetics, her God given power, right? Which is to be able to bring to us, while the divine masculine helps in manifestation, the divine feminine pulls to her, brings to her, magnetizes to her, is the correct word, the desires of her heart. Now, this is in alignment with action, okay? Manifestation is the male God given gift, the divine masculine God given gift. And the divine masculine within, right? This is how this is affecting your divine partnership, is helping you as you get into alignment with what you truly desire by taking the actions to bring forward the desired outcome that you've been looking for in this lifetime. Now, one of the visions that was given to me is, how they say you have like a elephant chained to a pike, and it can be there for whatever amount of time it needs to be trained, whether it's years. You take off the chain, you remove the pike, it will never go more than the 10 feet or 20 feet or however many feet it was allowed to actively, move forward, because it had been programmed. The training, right, of it being stuck, it being stagnant, was so deep and integrated into that elephant, right? And I think it's a really beautiful analogy that they showed me, because we're actually free. We do have sovereignty over our lives, our willpower, but there's been so much no buts, right? there's been a lot of trauma that even though you've gotten free from that trauma, your mind is still stuck in the past. So divine feminines, what we've been doing is taking our power back. See, this is the moment and the time where the divine feminine power is rising. And in this rising, you may not realize that the spike has been removed, that you are no longer chained to that spike. But who I'm speaking to does, right? Because they realize that something is still trying to keep them connected to those old magnetics, which isn't the case anymore. And so what I was being shown, it was this fight. And it looked like it was like a rope, but like a rope that had been tied around, and it was somebody's arm, their wrist. And it was yellow and it was orange, which is the colors of the sacral chakra and the solar plexus, right? Orange for a sacral, yellow for solar plexus. And the fight, it was a fight, but I think the fight's also speaking to a fight within, against ourselves, right? Because the way that I was being shown, it was, me pulling on that string to break it free, but it seemed like it was attached to another version of myself, right? So, and I believe these are the diversions from what's being shown to me that have been conditioned, right? Of like that pike, that even though you're free, you don't realize that you can actively move. You don't realize that you can move forward. So this is where you're wrestling yourself, right? And I remember one of like my brothers in spirit told me the biggest battle that you would ever have is defeating yourself, right? We can sit here, and not many people are actually prepared to listen to that or even receive it. But I think there's so much truth in that. We may look at like the narcissist as being the biggest battle, right? The family wounding, whether it's mother wounds, father wounding, you know, those are just, yes, those are very important moments within our journey that we have to get over. But then it's okay, the aspect of our wounded selves. And I've been realizing that this is an aspect that has been coming to the forefront to be addressed a lot more recently. And, it's don't be, like I'll speak to these aspects of myself. Don't be afraid of success. Don't keep thinking the negative outcome. And so you redirect your mind constantly, right? Now, after this, after I was able to kind of like rip the rope, right, that was tied around this wrist, um, I realized that I had been like I broke myself free, right? And I feel like this is happening a lot on a collective spectrum, right? Whether you're in the beginning stages, somewhere in the middle, this is a process of becoming who you were truly meant to be. So then I see a vision of my divine, counterpart, and so my eternal flame shows me himself taking off what it's like the little tubes that they stick up your nose for oxygen when you're breathing. And I'm like, not him with an oxygen mask. Okay, this man's hilarious. But the thing is, when we're talking about a soul, right? So your eternal flame, however you're connected to this being, whether it's physically or whether, it's energetically in different realms. If you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. Um, Understand that, they are the power in manifestation. And there's been so much wounding in the divine feminine that she didn't believe certain things were possible. And so this is why there's been deep moments of falling in love with yourself, falling in love, with the journey, actively building faith within yourself, faith within your capabilities of being successful without running from that. And as you are showing up for yourself, now your divine masculine can also be a vibrational match to what you are feeling, what you are experiencing. Okay, because they are a vibrational match. It's where you were. So this is why we do the work for constant evolution, constant progression within, the life of our consciousness, right? So um I was also experiencing very like uncomfortable symptoms. I was very, very hot. So there could be you could be possibly experiencing temperature fluctuations, just being very uncomfortable in your body. I was given this information because there's psyche readjustments that are taking place. And again, if you are battling against yourself, right, battling against a version of this grand energy, we'll call it an elephant at this time, and that's been, chained, ball and chained to a pike that is keeping them stuck somewhere, but you've gotten free, but you don't realize that you can go exploring now, right? This is where you're at in the process. You're now getting you're not being able to explore. So these psyche readjustments that are taking place is you understanding that you're free. You now taking the steps to, this is where action meets alignment. This is where now you're taking the steps to bringing your desired, reality in into your reality, right? You're no longer counting yourself out. You're realizing you're no longer stuck. And so this does affect the psyche. This does affect even your gifts, right? So I'm realizing there's more like telepathic it, a deeper telepathic experience, but also deeper clairaudient experiences, right? Because you're now not looking at things from a state or a lens of desperation. You're just allowing things to be as you show up for yourself, and you allow the world to reflect that back to you as well. So again, this is where it's freeing up space in the, eternal flame connection. This is where now there's more room to actually breathe, relax, you guys, to even be able to experience each other on a different level, because there's not that tension, there's not this issue that needs to be resolved. You're now, again, uh, you went through the process of falling in love with yourself. You're still falling in love with yourself, right? And I don't think that this falling in love with yourself is a process that just ends. You're constantly going to be discovering different aspects of self, which is going to be causing you to constantly be falling, or growing. I like to say growing in love, growing deeper in love with yourself every single day, and so this is the aspect of becoming, right? So let's get into the cards. The first card that I was told to or the deck that I was told to use was the Rainwater Readings deck. Okay, by me, before I decided to, rebrand everything. So, um, this card is Well Earned Blessings. This is moving from one stage to the next. I'm also hearing one timeline to the next, right? Your perception has changed. And for me, this is very symbolic because, again, moving from the, the pike, right? The pole essentially that you were changed to something that is more in alignment with you, because your perception changed. You allowed yourself to, flow. You allowed yourself to go with the inner callings of what you knew you were being called to. You were being called to something greater. The next card that came out is one of my favorites. Is maintain your frequency. Where you're at right now, it's a really beautiful energetic space. Okay. And this is important because as you are going through life, showing up for yourself, right? You want to make sure that you're um, staying in place with your vibrational frequency. Your frequency, and this is something that I'm like studying and getting into, actively determines the dimension that you are operating out of, right? Now, I wouldn't say 1D or 2D, right? We're beyond it, right? But for those that are just operating um, from the physical plane, that is 3D consciousness, right? Then you have 5D, 6D, 7D, 8D, 9D, and 10, 11, 12. Some of these D's you're not even going to access in the physical body. Okay. But with that being stated, the vibration that you are in does allow you to access the um, dimensions. And in those dimensions, there's different realities that are available to you, right? Especially concerning manifestation. So there's stages that have to be achieved in this journey. We can't just jump from, like 3D to, okay, let's say 6, 7D. That's not, that's a progression. It's usually something that takes years, right? So you've been doing the work to maintain your frequency, to establish, access to higher dimensions. And it's not for, because those that can truly access higher dimensions isn't with like greed in mind. It really is for love of self, love, of the creator, of divinity, of wanting, to see the collective consciousness rise and understanding that you are doing your part in all of this. So where you're at, it's very important for you to maintain, okay, your frequency, your individuality. You're going to, I feel like you're going to be exposed to people, and this is where your light reigns true. Your light reigns supreme because you're being true to authentic self. um and as after maintain your frequency, we have creative flow. To me, this is a lot of energy that is, especially with divine feminines in the collective, we are ultimately wanting to create, whether it's projects, whether it's life, whether it's a new life, a new reality, whether it's meals in the kitchen, whether it's arts and crafts. We, as a collective, for those that I'm speaking to, this is very much um a season for creation. And this is where, again, you're honoring yourself, not from a standpoint of this needs to make me money. This is more so, these were the tools that I wish I had. These were the things that I wish I was able to tap into sooner. But you're not looking at it from an aspect of time loss. You're looking at it like, okay, this is a time to create. So we're creating. And there's a deep desire for creation. You don't have to create every single day if you don't feel it. But this is where play, again, manifests as your reality. Okay. um, the next card that came out is bedroom. Okay. And I feel like this is a deepening of the relationships between eternal flames, right? Those that are connected. This is where now, again, I was speaking of a different level of engagement, of interacting with each other. This is going to um, be affecting the bedroom because there's vulnerability within you, but there's no shyness. You're in a full embrace of self, and in fully embracing yourself, you're allowing yourself to embrace another, which is your eternal flame. This is your reflection. And in embracing that other, there's sparks that are going to fly. There's going to be chemistry that's going to be there, but this is safe. This is where now you get to explore creation energy, which is sexual energy. Sexual energy is creation energy, from a very, from like a sanctuary type of level where it's sacred. It is sacred between you and your partner. It is sacred to you. And so it's not just about sexual energy, because sexual energy is creation energy. This is about also creating, right? But it's you I'm getting like tantra. Some people may be using tantra and in connection with manifestation, and it's nothing wrong in doing that when you are doing it with the right person and with the right intentions behind it, right? You are manifesting things that are affecting you in your life, not the will of others. um then we have the crown of thorns, and this is like, what? um but I do feel like what this is speaking to is this is leaving all the things that you've gone through, all the wounding, all the scars, right? Through your past experiences have left scars, on like a soul level, right? And I'll explain that. It's an energetic imprint, right? Of realizing you never want to make the same mistakes again. You never want to be around the same people again. You want to be around a certain caliber of people with heart, okay? And so, we can learn lessons and we can transform and we can transmute. And all of that is really good. See, the whole process of growth within our souls is also realizing that the mistakes we made we never want to repeat again. And so that does leave like an energetic scar, right? Where it's a warning that goes off before you repeat those mistakes again whenever you decide to reincarnate, if you do, right? This is hard earned wisdom. This is what's allowing you um to gain insights, because you basically shed, whether you bled for this or not, physically, energetically, you did, and it was a very, very risky thing that you came down to do. And I remember speaking with the angelics and a beautiful soul sister of mine, which I love, and you should always check her out as well too at vibegarden.org. um we were having a channeling session, and the team came through and they were like, listen, if you were if you didn't play the part well, right, then they would have never believed opposition, right? These, malevolent spirits. It's like it's oh, what's the word? Trojan horse. You had to be a Trojan horse, right? Kind of like, the divine abandoned you, or like you were being a gift that was given away type of thing. And that, the enemies or malevolent spirits can do with you as they will, right? That was the secret um agenda, and or not agenda. That was like the secret ploy. And it was a very risky plan by the divine, because I can tell you from my own experiences, I don't know if I was going to make it out alive. And but I do know that something, I was always in sync and in tune with something that was beyond me. And to me, that is spirit, connected to the divine. That even though I may not have been tapped into my gifts at that particular point in time because of trauma, something was always leading me to my greatness. Something was always leading me back home, and that was the creator, and its beautiful divine creations. And you know um so understand that even though you had to get into this and there was very treacherous energies that you had to walk through, maybe even bypass, it was all for the greater good of the collective. um because your story is being used, as we have the Black Widow, kind of like a warning, but also an example, right? And the reason why because I was confused why the Black Widow came up, but I understood what the divine, is ultimately trying to say, is that, these malevolent spirits will feed on you. They'll harness, they'll harness you, or they'll keep you trapped, in their webs, a web that you can't get out of. But they'll go and keep you alive and keep feeding on you and feeding on you and feeding on you until you have no more to give. And I actively love spiders because guess what? They're actually very protective. But I understand the role that it's trying to um, say in this particular reading, right? And you've allowed yourself to break free from that web. You allowed yourself to fill yourself with love, right? You have roses, and appreciation for self. Again, I've been talking about this deep falling in love with self. Okay. I've been staring at the mirror, looking into my eyes. Okay. Like they're the windows to my soul, because they are. And, so there's this deep aspect of love and appreciation, and you have like the rose essence that you're just filling your energetic field with, is love, is unconditional love. And there's this outpour to self. There's this outpour, even to your wounded self, to your future self, to your higher self, to the current you. But I feel like it's more than anything an outpour to you in the present moment. You could look at the past and see everything that you've overcame, you know, and see how you've developed into this beautiful aspect of self. And then you have the flamingos The flamingos speak to a beautiful union. They're one of the most beautiful birds, in my opinion. And this is, to me, this is they're giving me kind of like the mating call of a swan, right? The dance. This is the dance off. This is where like your energies within are dancing, are balancing. I know it says flamingo and I love flamingos, but the vision that came to my mind was swan. And it's in this water, and like there's this mating call, right? And so now you're in a graceful period of your life, right? Dancing, to the tune of your own drum, right? You and your eternal flame. And this is where the world can see what true love looks like. You can see and experience what true love is like because you've been showing it to yourself first. And I feel like all of this is leading to the number one spot, right? Which is the crystal ball, our intuition being clear, seeing clearly, moving and operating out of discernment for your highest good, right? Allowing, the past to be the past, allowing the future to be the future, but being so tuned in with the present that you are seeing what's clearly in front of you now. You're so in tune with the present that you're not distracted by the past, you're not distracted by the future. And if thoughts start to come up, you recenter to what is true, you recenter to what is now. And this will allow the overarching card to um, be be the thing, which is the train. You're moving on from your old life, right? And underneath it, it's like literally old car, which is just confirmation. And then underneath it again, it's like laying birth, which speaks like lost, complex, going inward. Like you had to go into a spiritual quest to be able to sit here and say, you know what, bye old car. I'm aligning, I'm moving forward, I'm moving on to what is true, what's been divinely aligned for me. So thank you so much for listening to this message from me in spirit, y'all. Take care. Peace.